No, we don't do cool intros on this podcast, unfortunately. Well, I'll do one for you right now. Welcome to Mutual Connections. Madison, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. I know this has been such a long time coming. Like, we have such great conversations in real life, and we've always said that some of the best conversations go unrecorded. So I'm very excited that we could finally kind of hop on and have a more official episode here with you.
I know, same. I mean, we just keep getting on the phone and have not yet thought to go ahead and record it.
Which is crazy considering some of the stuff that we're trying to do together. And I know that we'll kind of get into some of the specifics of that down the line. But I want to just like our audience or anybody who has not seen any of your posts come across the board here, just a little bit about yourself in general, how you got started in some of like the LinkedIn space, because I know that's primarily what you do. And yeah, just kind of give us an intro about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm Madison Wallace and I'm the founder of MBW Services. So my background was really in marketing and sales. I always worked in small organizations, so both of those roles were always combined for the most part, which was really neat and interesting, but I always leaned towards favoring the marketing side and branding and things like that. One of the companies I was at went through 3 rebrands while I was there, which was insane. And anyway, so I experimented a lot with just outreach, inbound activities, what works, things like that. And I kind of hit this honey hole with a mixture of inbound and outbound, but not your traditional inbound, not traditional email marketing or company updates and things like that, but more from like a personal branding side and getting people really comfortable with you. So anyway, then I met our good friend, Brett Kiley, and started working with him on his LinkedIn and helping him. And eventually he was like, you really have to offer this to people. And so anyway, that's how I got started. I've been doing this now for about 8 months or 9 months, I think, just officially, and loving every minute of it.
Well, that's really exciting. And I know you mentioned Brett when I did an episode with him, and he's been just such a great person to know and to see everything that he's got going on. So it's really cool that that connection that you had is what almost like jump started your career and what you're doing here with the LinkedIn, because it fits into what we always talk about of where networking becomes genuinely important, not just like random people you meet online. It's how can we use that to start building conversations, building relationships that end up being really mutually successful. I guess what made you so interested in LinkedIn branding specifically? I mean, you came from like the marketing and the sales world, and I know I'm kind of more directly in the sales world, but I did run like a digital marketing thing in my past life, and I know a little bit about how important social media is for business and personal branding. Like, what made you get into LinkedIn specifically?
Well, when you think about just social media platforms, there's Instagram, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. And a lot of those other platforms are very business to consumer based. I've lived in the B2B world since I started my career. So LinkedIn is number one, what I knew best. And number two, there's just all of this untapped opportunity around LinkedIn. Like I think it's up to, I need to check the number now, but I think something like 1.2 billion users on LinkedIn, and only 1% of them are actually posting weekly, which is absolutely insane. So anyway, I think that there's just a whole lot of untapped opportunity, and it's the best platform in the B2B atmosphere too. You can't make the same traction on Instagram or Facebook in the same realm. So that's really what attracted me to LinkedIn, and just how many different things you can do with it and how much the platform's really missing.
Yeah, 100%. And I like what you said about that it's one of the best B2B or at this point, the best B2B platform because it isn't full of just like consumeristic type content. People are really on here trying to be thought leaders in whatever they're doing, or they want to put across, something for actually what they sell or what they do for a job, which I agree. I feel like we don't see that as much on Instagram. I feel like X a little bit, like people are a little bit more in that world over there sometimes, but LinkedIn is its own beast, and I think it does a really good job of capturing that. I guess the one thing I'd want to say is it almost seemed like, at least in my time, that Instagram was more the personality-based platform, right? Like people would be posting their selfies and what they do during the day. How do you see us being able to like start bridging that gap? And I know people are, but like from your perspective, kind of as a brand consultant and people working with people on LinkedIn, like how can people start building trust through their personality when it comes to LinkedIn and building their LinkedIn personality?
Well, I'll start with this. A lot of founders and CEOs will make a mistake by trying to focus their efforts on a company LinkedIn page, but that's not really where you see traction. I actually made a post about this recently. Like Microsoft, for example, has 26 million followers and they get 30 to 40 likes per post, which is insane. And then the CEO, he has about 11 million and he gets 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 engagements on a post. So that kind of goes to show you that LinkedIn, I mean, it was built, well, I won't get into the history of LinkedIn, but it's a networking platform essentially. So people are there to connect with other people. They're not there to connect with your company. They're not there to, just interact with a logo. They're there to interact with people. So working in your personality is a big part of that because people, might think that you're absolutely phenomenal at your job, but if they don't like you, this in sales, right? People buy from who they like and who they trust. So they need both of those things. And I mean, what a better way than LinkedIn to showcase that through your content, through LinkedIn video, through, there's so many different facets that you can really show your true personality and show what you're like. And then people can make a decision from there. But it's essential, right?
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on people who think they have to try to fabricate like a different persona online than who they actually are in person because maybe they're not comfortable like posting stuff that like maybe that's not just not their thing, right? Like they don't record videos of themselves or they don't talk or they've never been an influencer. If you're just an executive and you're really good at being an executive, you might not know what it looks like to put across the right, brand voice on LinkedIn. So what would you say about the importance of putting yourself across genuinely to create genuine trust with your audience?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's a balance too, right? Of professionalism and personality, right? Like don't go so off the wall that people are like, what does this have to do with LinkedIn, right? But I remember meeting with a client once that said, Madison, I don't want to show up in bow ties and pantsuits, word for word. And he's like, I just want to be myself. Like, is that so bad? And I'm like, be yourself, like, absolutely. And there's a strategic way of going about that, right? You don't want all of your content to be about your business and what you do and trying to attract people. You want to work in these stories and these personal elements to be able to get people to trust you and get to know you and want to connect with you, whether they want to do business with you or not, right? They want to connect with you, they want to be your friend, whatever the reason. So when it comes to video specifically though, it's hard for some people to sit in front of a camera and be able to record themselves. And I mean, myself included, when I first started, right? I was awkward. I was like, this is so much different than having a conversation with somebody. And I think the best way to counteract that is to get on a conversation with somebody like what we're doing right now. Like this, it doesn't feel like you're sitting in front of a camera reading a script and being so robotic and you're trying to keep up with what's going on and what you want to say. But if somebody asks you the right questions, then, you can very candidly share that information.
Yeah. Where it feels like you're putting across a genuine version of yourself because you're answering something that you're passionate about or that you want to build a brand around or that you're trying to build a business around. Being able to hop on an actual conversation with somebody, that's going to come across so much better than, like you said, just sitting in front of a camera. Because I guess I'll ask you, because I have some for myself, but have you maybe tell a story of maybe a client or even for yourself? What does it typically look like, or how long does it take to get a good cut of a video if you just have to sit down and set up a phone and talk into it by yourself?
Oh man. Like how many takes of a video? Can we
Or
say
hour?
that right there? I had one client tell me that they recorded, I think, either 28 or 38 times for a 40-second clip. And I was just bewildered with that. I was like, oh my gosh. However, I understand because actually the video that's on my website, that was one of the first videos where I truly sat down and tried to have a very professional video. And just for myself, that 1 minute video took me 5 hours. Now I can sit down and I can record myself and be done with it in 30 seconds, right? But it takes a long time when people are getting started. 28 takes, 38 takes, that's pretty normal to start off with video. It just takes time to get used to. But when you're sitting on a conversation, it's a completely different story, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It more feels like if you can just put yourself in any situation that's gonna bring out the more genuine side of you, whether that's giving a keynote and you can pull clips out of it, whether that's having someone actually transcribe a conversation that you have with each other and then putting some of those posts out as text posts, or if you're sitting on a podcast and someone can ask you questions about your brand or about your business, and you can turn those into posts for your LinkedIn as well. When we start to talk about building trust with your audience, building credibility, building personality for your brand, it feels like the more genuine, the better. And one of the best ways you can do that is by being on a live conversation with somebody else. And I just
Which,
love that that's kind of how we framed how we love having some conversations with people specifically
yeah,
for their stuff as well.
absolutely. And by the way, it also showcases their expertise more because if you're scripting a video, nobody knows how you scripted that video, how much research you did beforehand and everything else. How genuine is that? But when you're actually sitting on a conversation and talking about your expertise, that comes across a lot more authentically, right? You know it rather than sitting down by yourself and filming it.
Yeah. And I know one thing that we wanted to talk about just in general too, like for someone just getting started or someone who might not know how much time or even money they want to invest like in their personal brand in general. We'll get into that a little bit deeper as a topic, but how would you recommend someone think about the swing in number of impressions or number of likes or number of comments? I feel like so many people get caught up in this world of what if I put all this effort into content and nobody sees it? Like, what's your perspective on really, handling that
Yeah.
emotionally?
Well, I'll be honest, it takes time to get traction, right? Very rarely are you going to see somebody just go viral on their first post. And it happens, don't get me wrong. But also I'd ask the question of like what's happening with that virality? What how do you say that?
Virality, yeah.
Virality. What's happening with it, right? Like are you getting leads? Are you having people message you? Are you having people follow you? Or are they just liking it and moving on, right? Because if it's something that's funny and people engage with, like that's great, right? But if it has nothing to do with what you do and you're not actually driving any business out of it, then I would assume, unless the point of it for you is just fun, then that's great too. Have at it. But if the point of it is to drive business, then that's not the right way to go about it, right? So don't get too caught up in the numbers of engagement and comments and things like that, because what matters is, are you driving leads? Are you driving business? Are you building trust with your audience? Is your audience growing? Like, look at the numbers that actually matter, not those vanity metrics that don't. And impressions have taken a hit, but that's actually a good thing because before LinkedIn was just like pushing out content, and it wasn't sorting it through very well. So I might have a post come up on my feed that wasn't relevant to me whatsoever. But now LinkedIn's algorithm is getting very good at tailoring the feed of what I consume, what you consume, what everyone consumes. And that's a good thing, right? Because then it's very targeted to who you're trying to get your message to, right?
Would you say
And
that's benefiting people more that have a real strategy in place? Because that way, if you have a more cohesive page and a more cohesive brand, you'll start to actually land on the feed of the audience you're trying to get to. Would you say that's kind of a good benefit for people who have real strategy?
absolutely, absolutely. And think about it this way too. I had somebody tell me, I wasn't working with them, but he said, I only got 400 impressions on my post. This is horrible, right? I'm like, okay, imagine yourself in a room with 400 people. It's a lot of people that is actually seeing your post, okay? And so think about it this way too. If those 400 people are extremely relevant, I'm going to compare it to like a conference. You're at a conference and everybody there is there for the same topic you are versus you go speak at a college university, none of them are your ICP, none of them is who you want to be speaking to, but you're talking to 15,000. Which room would you rather be in? The room with 400 that are in the same business as you, or the room with 15,000 that's not going to drive business for you, right? I think that's a good way to think about it.
That's a great way to think about it. I think I know when I was in the very beginning stages of being interested in digital marketing and sales from the very beginning, one of the number one voices I listened to a lot, and I'm sure you're familiar with him as well, was Gary Vee. And he would talk a lot about content creation, even from a personal branding. You could turn anything into a business type of branding. But he was one of the people who would post about that all the time. It would show like 10 views with a picture of 10 people. And like being able to actually understand that we are honestly on a social network. And if you can have the right audience and they're responding well to your content, it's going to put you in a great spot. I want to kind of stick on the idea that if we can get the right audience and the right ICP for all of your posts and all of your personal branding getting in front of the right people. In your opinion, who is the best type of person, or even just your opinion in general on this, of who should be investing in their personal brand?
I mean, the answer to that is everybody, right? Everybody should be investing in their personal brand, especially in the age of AI. How do you stick out, right? How do you stand out? How do you get a company to really want you to work for them? How do you drive business? If you're not investing in your personal brand and you're not putting out content, you're missing a huge opportunity. And I don't use absolutes often, but I'm going to say everyone, right? However, it really depends what you're trying to do on how you want to build your brand. But everybody needs to be building up their presence. Everybody needs to be putting out content and trying to make themselves important to put themselves in the position to be the solution to whatever the problem is versus a solution in the midst of the many, right?
Yeah. If you were someone in the audience of everybody on LinkedIn, when you say that if you want to stand out and set yourself apart, what would you say that actually looks like? Like when you see someone and go, that person stands out for a reason. What does that mean to you?
So, in the world of LinkedIn, that means that somebody is very clear on the problem they're solving, for starters. They're not just saying that I'm just going to use something so general, right? But they're not saying that they're just an expert in business growth, let's say. Okay, what does that mean? They're saying exactly, I work with small to medium businesses on their operating system for scalability or something like that, like something so specific that you know that they understand the problem that you're going through. So they're very clear. There's actually a problem that they're solving and they are the solution to that problem, right? Like that's somebody that stands out, and especially to whoever they're trying to target. And there's a lot of ways. I mean, I could talk forever about how to make that clear on your LinkedIn, but essentially those are the people that stand out and those are the people that you want to work with, right? Because they understand exactly the problem that you're going through and they're positioning themselves as the solution to that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess from your perspective, because I know you work with your clients directly, and there's going to be certain people where genuine investment into their personal brand goes beyond just a time investment or even an educational investment, maybe of figuring out how to do it appropriately. Where would you say it kind of crosses the line of it's actually going to be worth it from an ROI perspective to work with a LinkedIn brand consultant versus someone who might just want to be getting on the platform and building a personal brand just for, a more typical or regular reason.
I mean, there's a couple lines, right? But to keep it pretty general, there's like a time and money line, right? When you run out of time, you don't have the time to do it, but you know you need to do it and you have the money to invest for it to get done, then you should hire a brand consultant, a LinkedIn consultant. That's when you should start investing actual money. Everybody should be investing their time if they don't have the capital to actually hire somebody to do it for them, but they might need direction on where to start. So, I mean, you can learn how to get very good at LinkedIn and positioning yourself and branding and all of these things if you put in the time effort. So, I would say if you don't have the capital, but you have the time, invest the time. If you don't have the time, but you have the capital, hire somebody. And that goes for so many things, right? But that's kind of that line of where it crosses and when you should look at getting help from
I
an
love
expert.
that. I think genuinely being in a position of there's been a couple times in my life, both from a sales perspective and honestly just like a life in business perspective, where if you are able to use the resources you have to get expertise from someone who can help you get that result faster, it becomes very worth it to invest your time 100% of the times that comes across your plate. And it becomes very worth it to invest your money if you are working with somebody who you actually trust will get you the directed result for it. So I would recommend the people that I know that it's been beneficial to. If you are an executive and you don't have as much time and you know for sure the benefit that could be done, let alone just LinkedIn branding in general, but even starting to put across all the thought leadership and the authority based content that we talk about, that is when it becomes worth the investment. And we've heard the positive feedback from that directly. So I like that you kind of have the same mindset on that.
Yeah.
I would say I want to get kind of like nitty gritty with you about like actual strategy for LinkedIn specifically, because I know, like I mentioned, I have like a brief background in some digital marketing, but mine's honestly more from a high level that was less social media. So I'm very curious to pick your brain on this. I want to walk through when you are actually evaluating or working with a client, what does it look like to put together content strategy?
So, content strategy is actually, I don't want to say it's not hard. It can be difficult when your mind is cluttered, right? So, I say before you get to the content strategy piece, you need to have your positioning honed in, right? Like who are you helping? How are you helping them? All of these different things you need to make sure you're very clear on before you move to the content strategy. But once you have your positioning statement down, you know who your ICP is, you know what the solution to the problems are. Let me back up, you know what their problems are, right? And then you know the solution to their problem and you're positioning yourself as the solution to that. Then you can get into your content strategy. And typically, so for example, for myself, like you'll have different topics that you talk about, like LinkedIn growth, personal branding, business to business marketing, content, all of these different things. So you have all these topics that you want to talk about, and that is part of your content strategy. So you call those pillars, right? Like, so you generally pick 4 to 5 different pillars. One of them can be like a personal journey pillar. You can talk about leadership. You can talk about LinkedIn growth. You can talk about cold calling as one. You can talk about B2B sales. What is that like? What does emailing look like? So you generally pick these like 4 to 5 topics that make up your content pillars. Okay, well, now you have these ideas of things that you want to talk about. Then you need the how do you talk about them. So that's your content architecture. So you can take one idea and write it 100 different ways, right? But your content architecture is this idea of, okay, you can write it from an expert authority perspective. So you can tell a story about that, about your experience, or you can talk about it from a growth perspective. You can do like a before and after, client case study kind of situation. There's an upward trend of something going on. You could talk about it from a relatable perspective. So you could say, I was speaking in front of 400 people and I just totally like was shaking and, whatever's relatable to a large amount of people. And then the last one is like your action-based content. So you're actually trying to get people to take an action. You're trying to get
Mm.
them to book a call with you. You're trying to get them to go watch your YouTube video or buy your product or whatever the case might be. So that's generally like the 4 pieces of content architecture that I really focus on with my clients is like, how do we take these different topics and put them into these different categories and create a good strategy for you? Because your content looks like a funnel, right? Like you start off with your like relatable top of funnel content, you're reaching a large amount of people, and then you start pulling them down the funnel into your authority based content and your growth based content. And then at the very bottom, you have the action based content. You're trying to get them to do something, you're trying to get them to work with you. So that's generally what the content strategy from a high level looks like. And so it's really not that difficult, but you need to make sure that that foundation is correct first and make sure that you're
Yeah.
very clear on what that looks like. And then you can start building your content strategy and do all of these other things.
I like that. And I want to stick on like the foundational part because it sounds like from your perspective, that is more important than anything else. Because if you don't know where we're aiming and you start building out all this strategy, it might not be as effective anyways. From me personally, honestly, because I'm attempting to do a bit of personal branding, but it isn't actually with a very specific end result in mind. And I could imagine that a lot of people that are starting to build a personal brand or haven't really been posting on LinkedIn ever, and I guess I'll say this too, if they're not like a business owner or a salesperson where there's a transaction at the end that's even possible, what would you say to that person as they start looking into how important it is to do personal branding where maybe there isn't a, book a call with me or a buy my thing, where do they kind of start from the brainstorming of that foundation?
So are you saying like if they don't have an offer yet necessarily, there's
Sure.
no
Yeah, maybe not an offer. Like they know that personal branding is important. They know that they want to start separating themselves in the marketplace more just kind of as a person, and maybe they don't have a actual offer or like call to action in mind yet, but they know they need to start.
So what I would say is start with the question, what do you want to be known for? Number one, what do you want to be known for? Okay, period. Point blank, end of story. And that can be a futuristic topic. Like eventually one day, I want to be known for being the best entrepreneur in the world. I don't know, the richest person or whatever it might be. Or it can be something like right now. I want to be known for the thing that I'm doing in my career right this second. Okay, so that you can take it a few different ways. Then I would say also ask yourself from a personal perspective, like, what do you want your life to look like? Okay, before you decide how you actually really want to position yourself in the market, because what you think you want to be known for might lead you to a life that you like or not, right? So think about those two things first. And then what I would say is you have to niche down before you niche up, right? So you need to start with one thing and you need to get really, really good at it and be known for it before you start being known for all of these other things. Because in psychology, there's something called the halo effect, right? And when people see you as credible in one area, they will just assume that you're credible in many, right? Like we see this with Alex Hermosi, for example, right? Like we all just trust him now. We just trust him with whatever he's got, right? And so that's generally how I like to say it is like start with one thing and get really good at it, become known for that topic. I mean, get so specific that people are like, Jacob is the solution to this problem, right? And then you can start expanding and talking about, more philosophical concepts or whatever else you want to be known for. Then you want to break off and start your own business, or then you want to do all of these other things. But the idea is when people see you as credible in one area, they're likely to see you as credible in other areas as well. Does that help?
Yes, I appreciate that answer a lot because I feel like the way that you framed that is genuinely motivational to somebody who might not know exactly what they want to do. Because if you attempt to become known for something, you're probably doing it because it's something you're really interested in or you're really good at and something that you probably want to be talking about a lot, which means in and of itself, it's very self-fulfilling if you start posting about stuff that you actually care about and that you like talking about. The idea that that can then roll over into a genuine audience and almost fan base if you get to that level where they will start listening to maybe something that's a little bit more philosophical. It's kind of cool that from a strategy perspective, you're saying if you get really, really niche about being an expert in X category from a business perspective, you actually can then lean into that personal side of what you want to be, sharing and spreading with the world as well. And I feel like that fits into what you're saying with your content pillars as well, because then you can start putting across the personal posts in combination with your authority-based posts, and then eventually, and like you mentioned as well, venture out into I want to now start a business around this X category that I feel like I genuinely am becoming a professional and a thought leader in.
Exactly, exactly. And when it comes to content too, the main goal, I wouldn't tell somebody you need to start off by posting 4 times per week, 5 times per week, 6 times per week. Like that's just not true. But every time you post, you should be making an effort to solve a real problem, right? Not just posting for the sake of posting or posting for the sake of consistency or whatever. You should be genuinely trying to solve a problem when you're putting something out there, because that's what a post is essentially doing, right? Is helping somebody with something that you've already experienced and you've already been through. It's what you do, right? So when you kind of combine all of those things together, then it starts making sense and it starts coming together, and it takes time, right? Like I say, generally 30 to 90 days, you should start seeing your audience like really growing. You should start seeing your content really taking off, things like that. But you have to stay consistent with it. And it's completely worth it. And at this period in time, it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary.
And let's sit on that because when I used to work with clients from a marketing perspective, I used to get the question all the time. How much should I post? What time of day should I post? Does it matter if I post at 1:27 p.m. or 8:24 a.m.? And I'm sure because you are a professional in the space and I'm a professional in a different space, the answer is like chill, dude. Don't ask me what exact workout routine you should be doing if you've never walked in the gym in your entire life, right?
Exactly.
So what's your perspective on people not obsessing over how many times per week or how many times per day and genuinely just starting? Also with the caveat being, what is your perspective on trying to do it as much as possible without sacrificing your genuine voice and just pushing out garbage?
Right. So you're going to write so many posts that you never even end up publishing, number one. So you need to get really good at the skill of writing. I
I
abs
wanna stop on that. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, when you have a thought in your head, you don't always say it, right? It's an intrusive thought, and you don't always put it out there. Sometimes, for example, you might have the urge to post something negative or like a rant or a vent or something, right? Generally, that's not a great strategy. And generally, you probably won't end up actually posting it, right? I've had posts before where I'm like, all these people posting all these things that I don't agree with or whatever, right? But then
And then you delete it.
I refrain and I delete it. I've got it out of my system. I wrote the post. I don't need to put it out there into the world, but you really need to work on that writing skill. So I genuinely push people to write every single day because it takes time, especially now with AI. You have to like wean yourself off of it because everybody's used to just, or at least many people that I talk to and that become clients, like they're so used to writing with AI, and I have to reteach them how to write and how to think and how to work in their personal experiences and all of these different things. But there's never a perfect time to post on LinkedIn. There's not a perfect day, and you don't need to stress about all of those things. Now, there's days where there's higher engagement or times where it's best suitable for your audience. Like, you can think about all of those different things, and especially as you get the hang of it. But what I would say is focus on that concept of always solving a problem in your posts and always making sure that what you're putting out there is valuable to somebody else because you have experience that other people need to hear and that would be genuinely helpful for them to hear. And there's so many people online that are getting hired to do things that they are not as much of an expert in as another person because that other person isn't posting or they're not putting their ideas and their thoughts out there. So I would love if all of the experts in all of their spaces could actually put things on the internet because then we know that there's actually true experts out there and it's not just people for the sake of posting, right? Does that make
And I
sense?
like that you just finished off with the next question I was gonna ask, like, just for the sake of posting, how would you I know you said, like, encourage people to write every day, kind of retrain the muscle of putting your thoughts on paper effectively, right, and actually getting them out and writing them. So how would you if you were to start with a new client, like, tomorrow, and they were really trying to figure out the balance between, "I know I should probably be posting more consistently or X amount of times per week based on the strategy you guys put together. How do you balance someone maintaining a consistent posting schedule versus not sacrificing their voice just in general and eventually maybe putting out something that was either subpar or just doesn't even fit with them branding wise?
Yeah. I'd say number one, focus on building up the habit. And there's general guidelines of like if you have, 1,000 to 3,000 followers, you should be posting like 1 to 3 times per week and like all of these different categories of how often you should be posting, right? And that's true to an extent ish. Like the more of an audience you grow, the more your audience is going to want from you. So that comes with the territory, but you first have to build the audience and build the habit and get really good at it. So what I would recommend to most people is start off by posting 2 times per week, right? Even one, if that's what you need to really craft like a good message with good value. And then in 4 weeks, you can go up to two. And then in 4 more weeks, if you want to go up to three, you can, but you can stick at 2 times per week. I mean, there's some people where 2 to 3 times per week is plenty, plenty to be posting. You don't need to be necessarily putting out, you don't need to be putting out posts just for the sake of putting out posts, right? Like if it's not helpful and it's not valuable, then you're not going to get traction anyway. Better to spend your time on crafting a good message and putting it out less often. Quality wins over quantity every time in this space specifically, right? And then you actually trust that person more too. They're not just posting 5 times a day and they have all this time to sit there and like posts and whatever, like clearly they're not working with clients. They're not busy enough, right? That's not actually true, but I'm just saying that also can be a credibility building factor to be posting a little bit less often, but you're still putting yourself out there. And there's one more thing that I want to mention as well is commenting. Commenting works essentially as posting because if I comment on something, you likely might see it because you and I engage a lot on LinkedIn, right? That is a place for you to also showcase your expertise is by commenting on other people's posts that are relevant to the industry that you work in or what you do and things like that. You don't always have to be making a post. You can be commenting on other people's because it essentially acts as a mini post, right? And I encourage everybody to engage, on LinkedIn and make sure that they're commenting and things like that because their audience will see it. And that just keeps them top of mind at all times,
Yeah.
essentially.
I love that. And it's really like it's almost a human principle that we've forgotten as you start thinking about all the how can I use AI to be efficient? How can I spam things out on a social media network solely with strategy in mind to eventually close more business. But sometimes we have to remember like these are human connections we're trying to make. Even if it is from a transactional perspective where you hope to get a sale, it's humans that we're interacting with, which means the posts have to be genuine. They have to come from a human talking to other humans. And if you're going to leave comments, same deal. It should be genuinely what your thoughts are with that person and maybe build a relationship with what they have or with their audience. So I feel like that is super, super important. And I
Yeah.
think when it comes to you talking about as we start leaning into volume or as you begin to work with somebody, right? I'd be curious from your perspective because this is like what you do as a job when it comes to working with actual clients for LinkedIn. When would you say it's smarter for someone to start putting in the reps and start trying to train themselves up and get the muscle going and start trying to develop what their voice is versus when you start actually working with maybe a brand consultant or going out of your way to do some more investment based things with LinkedIn?
So I think that when we're talking about working the writing muscle specifically and like the difference of having a ghostwriter write for you or things like that, which I also do ghostwriting for clients, especially ones that don't have time to be sitting there and writing every single day and wanting to post and all of these different things, building graphics, like they just don't have time for it. But what is important for those clients specifically is I work very closely with them on extraction calls is what we call them, right? Like where I'm asking them questions and I'm picking their brain and I want to make sure that like their tone of voice really shines through that post, right? And it's very similar if you're writing your own content. You need to write how you talk. You don't want to be writing in a totally different fashion than how you actually speak with an individual when they get on the phone, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about video is you can actually see how somebody interacts. You can see how they speak. You can see if their content really lines up with who they are as an individual, right? And so that's what I would say is like really focus on writing how you speak and make sure that you're actually putting yourself out there so that people trust who you are.
If you were to be able to actually record those like check-in calls with your clients where you're trying to adopt their voice for real, you're trying to adopt their ideas for real. If the conversations that the executives are having could actually be recorded and turned into content that would be genuine from them, like that's pretty much what we're talking about capturing tone and capturing voice for real. Like
Exactly.
what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, when I do these extraction calls, right? Like it's almost like the conversation that you and I are having right now, right? Like I just keep digging and I just keep asking and things like that. It would make for amazing content, right? I have done that for some of my clients, but I much prefer for them to come on a platform like Mutual Connections so that they can get that full experience and they can really talk about all the things like from somebody that doesn't know them as well as I do. right? Like I'm to the point with some of these people where I'm like digging so deep into the trenches because I know them so well. But for somebody that's trying to learn about them and things like that, that's where it's really good for them to come on a platform like this. But yeah, if some of those calls could be recorded and turned into content, it would be amazing. I would just have to give them a heads up so that they made sure that they weren't showing up in sweatshirts and hair back, no makeup, all the things.
Yeah, no, that's really funny. But it makes sense. Like the more genuine we can get people when they're talking about the stuff that matters for their brand, that's gonna be what's really important. I think I selfishly am curious what your perspective is on this, where like what's your opinion on genuine like vulnerability on LinkedIn? Because we talk about like branding of being an industry expert in something, but then I have people that we follow, like some of the guys in the dad good community. I know Chris is really tight with those guys, and we'll see some stuff that's very like, here's how I'm trying to live my life, or here's a personal experience that I went through that taught me something that is real. And I could be a sales guy, but I'm talking about something completely outside of that. It's like, what are your thoughts for that? And honestly, maybe just from a normal person's perspective, if you could say, versus maybe an executive as well. I'm really curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, the more vulnerable you are, the more somebody else is going to trust you. Because if you just put on this facade all the time that everything's great and there's never a problem, I've never made a mistake, I've never, I've just always had it good, then I wouldn't trust that person because that's just not true. We've all made mistakes. We've all had failures. We all have had moments where we're not necessarily proud to share them, but it helps somebody else too, right? If you actually do have the courage to share some of that and you are vulnerable on the platform, then you're going to help somebody else with that story. So I absolutely think that you need to share those vulnerable moments, especially when they led to lessons. That's a very important aspect too. When you're
Yeah. No,
being vulnerable, make sure that it ties into something valuable and a lesson that somebody can take away from it as well. Because you don't want to just share a horrible experience with no positive ending. So if you can share this experience or this mistake that happened, then give a valuable positive note at the end, then those are like the best posts on LinkedIn, I would argue.
yeah, I would agree. I feel like it builds such a level of trust when you can put across things that are real in whatever sense that is to you. And that's why what I love what we do here sometimes, because we'll have conversations with people about why they're inspired by what they do, or like how their family helps drive what it is that they do. I know that was such a great conversation I had with Brett. We dove into some of that stuff, and that was so great to hear like come from him and like get another genuine side of people's story. I think it's really important. And honestly, I'm kind of curious, like even just coming away from the tactics and tangibles of LinkedIn branding, with how you got into it. I know because you kind of took the leap into starting your own business on the LinkedIn branding side of things. How did it feel to do that, and what actually pushed you over the edge to take that on as like a full-time opportunity instead of just something that you were building and dreaming on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that I had amazing people in my corner that made it easier for me to take the leap. I knew I had good mentors. I knew I had people in my corner that understood and knew business, and I could ask at any time if I needed help with, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? Right. Like, I've never founded a company. This is the first company I've ever founded. So, I mean, I was in the trenches. I wasn't sure, am I going to make a mistake? Am I doing this right? So I was very, very fortunate to have the community to be able to take the leap. And I was also extremely blessed that the client base was pretty immediate, right? Like when I took the leap, I took on 3 clients the following, right? Like it was so immediate and there's such need in the market. And I would say if anybody is curious if they can leave whatever 9 to 5 and start their own business or start their own side gig or whatever the case might be, right? I would encourage you to take that leap, especially if you have the expertise, you have the knowledge, and you've done a little back end work. Like they say that you can take that leap after you've made up 60% of your salary before so that you
Mm.
can actually take the leap. I did not do that. I just belly flopped and it worked out, thank God. However, I belly flopped into it. I didn't actually flop. That could have sounded negative. But yeah, I mean, that's what really motivated me to take the leap. I've always been interested in the marketing and creative side of things. I've done this for companies. And so it was just a matter of, okay, let's translate this from companies to individuals. Individuals need this now, right? Like everybody, not everybody, but there were so many people I was talking to that was losing their jobs and layoffs. And they were like, Madison, can you just help me as a friend? Like, LinkedIn, I don't. Can you help me get another job or whatever the case is, right? And so I was just hearing about all these layoffs. I knew there was a need in the market. And so, what do you do at that point? You fill the need in the market, right? And you become the solution to that problem. So, yeah, I hope that's the answer you were looking for.
It is. Anybody who has like taken any form of entrepreneurial leap, I think understands like that's going to take a little bit of risk, and it's going to take trusting yourself and then also trusting that you'll figure it out when you get there. What advice would you have for somebody who maybe feels like I feel like there's a lot of people I talk to where they think they're an expert because they have a lot of years of experience or they have some proof of concept that they're good at something, but they don't know why somebody would want to pay them for it. I'm curious how you can like what is maybe some advice for someone even like a really young entrepreneur or someone doing something for the very first time, like jumping into knowing I'm going to provide value for somebody and that means that I could get paid for it. What would you say mindset wise is a good perspective there?
Mindset wise, if you set your mind to something and you know that you can do it, I truly believe that you can really do it. Now, it might take some time. I'm not going to say it's going to happen right off the bat. However, if you really set your mind to something, those are the best entrepreneurs. They knew they could do it even when everybody was telling them no. And then they made it, right? And what I would also say, just from a level-headed perspective, is ask people, conduct some customer research. Ask, what would you be willing to pay for a service like this? I'm not asking you to buy from me, but I'm asking, what would you be willing to pay, or would you even be willing to pay for something like this? Right? So start asking people around you that you trust and that would have the problem that you could solve and see, and just start filling out the market. Start talking to people that are doing what you want to be doing or doing something similar or adjacent to what you want to be doing, right? And start ask them questions candidly. I'm happy. Anybody that gets on the phone with me and they're like, Madison, how did you do it? I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
This is what I've done thus far, right? Like I have a friend that's thinking about branching off and starting a software engineering consultancy, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, do it. Like you have the drive, you have the motivation, you have everything you need. Go conduct the customer research, go start putting an offer together. Pretend like you have a meeting tomorrow and put together a presentation, right? Because we all work with urgency. I think this is something that Alex Hermosi says too. Like if I told you that I was going to come take your two kids tomorrow if you didn't accomplish this, what would you do? I would accomplish it, right? Like I would do it.
Definitely.
So put yourself under some pressure, put yourself under some time, like a time bound goal, right? And make it happen because you can. It's just a matter of motivation and drive and getting the thing done.
Because people will show up to work because their boss would fire them, but they
Exactly.
won't wake up for themselves to do the project that's gonna take them over the edge and let them start what they actually wanna do. I love that perspective because I think there's this weird culture, especially, like, the people that I knew as I was first getting into the sales world who also want to be entrepreneurs. There's this weird notion that entrepreneurship has to be this island in the middle of nowhere where you take the leap by yourself and you grudge through the hard times by yourself. And I think the perspective you're bringing to the table of talk to your community, talk to anybody that you know who's doing something adjacent or doing something similar, ask for advice, don't quit your job without getting some good customer sentiment. Like it doesn't have to be this all or nothing right out of the gate perspective, and I think that's really really powerful for like entrepreneurship. And I think it fits really well into the context of our entire conversation where if there's something you want to eventually build a business on, create content about it. Talk
Yep.
about how you're going to bring value doing the thing that you're doing. Maybe put out content and content strategy and trust with your audience to the extent that they go, do you sell this as a service? And then you can eventually say, yes, I can. And I think that's almost what you're getting to with those content pillars, right? Of like, get the audience, get people to trust you, be able to communicate your philosophies, have a genuine fan base. And then once there's an offer involved, that's just how good business is done. That's what it sounds like to me.
Exactly. And the more you can create and the more you can sell, the more of an audience you have and the more fans, right? You have followers, things like that. That's business. That's business. So then when you keep putting out new offers or you keep hiring new employees or you keep building your business, they're there and they're ready and they want to invest not only because they believe in your business, but because they believe in you as well. So that's like the driving force behind it all, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I've had this kind of theme for all the episodes that I like to do, where at the end I like to ask, like, is there a philosophy or maybe something that you've been learning or teaching yourself in the season that you're in that you would say you would either recommend to somebody else or that you just want to share?
Um, I would say I'll use this as like one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten. And I don't know the very best because I couldn't possibly categorize them. However, I got this advice once about universal standards, right? Like there's this thought process that we all need to, do certain things. Go to college, get a good job, move up the ladder, maybe start a business later on, invest your money, things like that. Universal standards doesn't have to be your standard,
Mm,
right? You can create your own reality or your own standards of how you want your life to look. So don't be afraid to build the life that you actually want to be living. And don't be afraid of the judgment that it might bring from other people, right? That's something that people might be afraid of for content is I don't want to put my thoughts out there. I'm scared people will judge me. Don't think about it. They might. I'm not going to lie to you and say they won't. They might, but when you're building your business and you're having all of this growth and you have a huge audience base, then those people that were judging you are going to think twice about it later on, right? So I would say you don't have to follow everybody else's standards. You can create the life that you want. Just don't be afraid to go and do it.
I love that because the one that I've always heard is if you do what everybody else is doing, then you'll live the same life that everyone else is living. So if you want to live a life that's different, you have to take different actions. And the other one I've heard that's a little bit more aggressive is if you're hearing advice from someone and you don't want their life, then
Don't
tell
take
them to F off. In more vulgar terms, for Mr. Andy Frisella himself. He's my favorite like entrepreneurial podcast with like the old MFCEO project, which is now operator standard. But that's a very, I agree with that. If someone is trying to give you advice or judge you, but in that category, you don't want any version of how they're living their life, their
don't
advice
do it.
does
Yeah.
not matter.
Exactly. I completely agree. And there's different people that you can take advice from in different areas. So I know some people that are
That's right.
phenomenal in business. I wouldn't ask them personal questions. There's people I would ask
That's right.
personal questions to. I would never ask business questions to, right? So yeah, you got to take everybody for what they're good at, right?
That's right. So if you were to tell a client, it's like we're gonna get your niche and your branding so down packed that someone will come to you to ask about how to run X business, but they might not ask you about something else because you want to be hyper specific, and that's kind of the whole goal. Yeah, no, I've appreciated our conversation so much. I think everything
We
that we've always talked about off camera, I'm glad that we talked about it more strategically here, for some people to really take away what it looks like to build a brand on LinkedIn, the importance of all those different content pillars and the different types of content that you can put together, and really just the idea that you have to get started and you have to be consistent and you have to be genuine. And I'm just so glad we could make the time today.
Same here. And I mean, I love partnering with you guys. I love sending my clients to this vodcast. I just think it's so amazing, such genuine conversation. It's so authentic. And I just appreciate you actually having me on. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. We'll do this again soon.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye, Jacob.
All right, thanks.